Welcome to another season of Pro to Pro, where we sit down with entrepreneurs and successful business people and talk about their journeys to their success in their career. We go behind the scenes and have candid conversations with them and discuss health, relationships, fitness, and of course, business decisions, good and bad. If you're looking for inspiration, valuable business insights, and a dose of motivation, you're in the right place. Join me and my guests as we share our experiences, ideas, and stories that can help you on your own journey of growth and success. Welcome, and remember, keep it pro to pro. Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Pro to Pro. I'm here with Brian McNally, who is a successful entrepreneur in the Tampa Bay area, and I'm proud to have him on as our guest. Welcome, Brian.
Thanks, Keith. Excited to be here.
Yeah, thank you for coming. I know it was kind of quick getting you set up in here, but I'm glad we were able to do it. So I know a little bit about your story. Just for the people who are listening and watching, I know that you did an incredible job in building up a business in, I guess it would be a period of like seven or 8 years, and you ended up flipping the business for multi seven figures. Or 8 figures, whatever amount it was, just an incredible amount of money, very successful. We always want to pare it back a little bit and kind of get, you're a young guy, want to share with everybody, how did you evolve to become this entrepreneur and become this individual who had this vision to create such an incredible company? I know it was in the healthcare staffing space, but talk a little bit about growing up and how you think influences that may have occurred in your life in retrospect affected your journey.
Yeah, so I'm from Northeast Philadelphia, which is kind of a working class neighborhood in Philadelphia. I come from that traditional, stereotypical Irish Catholic background, right? So my dad's a longshoreman, and
oh wow, okay.
All my friends are in the trades, cement, roofing, whatever it may be. I've got friends who are iron workers, all that kind of stuff, right? So that very blue collar, kind of gritty sort of part of town, right? So I'm from a young age was just taught to respect the dignity of hard work. That there's, that if you're going to do something, you better do it right. You better work hard, and if you want respect from the people around you, be someone that can carry the weight, right, and do the work. So, in everything I've done, I've kind of always been wired that way. It was kind of trained in me from a young age, and just in my environment. But as I got older, oddly enough, my dad refused to let me go work on the waterfront with him. I'm like, oh, it's a good union job. I can make good money, and he's like, nope. It's too dangerous.
Were you the oldest?
Youngest.
Youngest, okay.
My brother wouldn't allow either of us, frankly. All my uncles, my dad had 10 brothers and sisters. They all worked on the waterfront. So oddly enough, he just felt like he wanted more for us, right? And, in the traditional modern society, right? Oh, you're going to go to college, you're going to do that kind of route, right? So I did that. It was kind of worked my way through it. And growing up, my dad wasn't perfect, right? He had an ideal for what he wanted. He just had a hard time living up to it himself, struggled with alcoholism, all those sort of things. And so, you're dealing with that. You're dealing with not having a lot of income and things, but you become resilient through that, right? And so all these things I went through personally and financially and all this kind of stuff at a young age just made me stronger. I think really it's the foundation that coupled with the pride I feel in working hard, really were the foundational elements for my personality that allowed me to be successful.
Was your dad tough on you growing up? And when I mean tough on you, did he set certain expectations for you and your brother that during the time living through was very frustrating for you or tough for you to achieve?
Not terribly, right? We weren't. It wasn't like you got to get the best grades. We weren't that kind of household, right? But the pride in our performance, sports were certainly the sort of thing where I wasn't allowed to go out there and half-ass it, for sure. I'd hear about it.
So you played sports growing up?
Yeah, I played a lot of sports growing up, just about everything. Soccer, baseball, basketball, not padded football, but I played tackle football every day with my buddies. Ended up playing high school in lacrosse, became captain of the high school lacrosse team.
I was, involved in sports growing up too. And I think that has a lot to say too about your DNA. You learn, how to work with a team. You learn about focus. You learn about discipline at a younger age. Your brain isn't going, as it is. Our brains are mush growing up, and we're not distracted in so many different ways. We kind of have goals that are placed in front of us in sports. And then, failures associated with it as well and moving through it. So you had some leadership skill sets that were there, traits that you had in high school. You had a tough Irish dad who I'm sure challenged you at times too. Would you say that your dad was the head of the household, so to speak, and your mom kind of, or
No,
traditionalized? Tell me a little bit about
the
that.
Opposite.
So your mom,
like I said, he struggled, right? And so actually, in reality, while he had a great vision for what we wanted to be in life, he couldn't practice it himself, right?
Okay.
He failed to meet his own expectation. My mom, on the other hand, is a rock. She's a little Italian woman. She's about 4'11".
Yeah.
Just total spitfire. Has a real joy for life, which comes from my grandmother. I mean, type of people who are just laughing and singing and dancing all the time, And really, through all that, she was the glue that held us together.
Was she born in the States? Or
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But she was the one that made sure we got to our games, made sure that we were taken care of at the household and, in a softer way, but also very important for her that we, did our best, right? But at the end of the day, she's really the glue and the rock of our family.
Yeah. My mom's Italian. My dad's passed. He was Armenian. There was a perception my dad was the boss, but at the end of the day, he deferred in many respects to my mom. He worked. My dad owned dry cleaning stores, so he was busy working so much. But my mom kind of kept us all in line, so to speak.
Yeah.
So where'd you end up going to college?
That's how I ended up here in Tampa.
Okay.
I had a friend who moved down from Philadelphia. She had some family here. And my freshman year, I went to go play lacrosse at a college out by Villanova called Cabrini College. And really just lost my way a little bit late in high school and early in college. I was just doing wild stuff, right? Really wasn't focused on education.
Well, first time you're away, was it your first time like living away from the house too?
Kind of, but I was really on my own for years before that. So my mom and dad got divorced at like 15. My dad kind of moved out. My mom was home intermittently, so me and my older brother.
What do they call latchkey kids? That's same as me.
At 17, I was cleaning the house, buying my own groceries, doing all that kind of stuff, and really just maintaining a household. So I was, fully grown, and that was really kind of the struggle I had when I got to college. I regressed when I got to college. I'm like, what do you mean there's an RA who's going to tell me what I can and cannot do? I'm like, I'm a grown man,
Yeah.
And that was the first time I realized when I got to college and I see all these kids who were just pacified. They couldn't even, wipe their own butts. I'm like, what are you guys doing? Like my room was clean. It was organized. I'm like, I don't want to live that way, right? I was used to cooking my own meals, all these sort of things. So that was kind of a shock to me. And I did my thing, but I really wasn't focused on education. I just kind of was going through the motions. I didn't really have a goal or a purpose, right? Initially it was to play lacrosse, which I quit the lacrosse team. It was the first time I quit anything in my life. Really just think I lost the passion for it, right? And was a little lost, right? Friend says, I'm moving to Tampa. I'm going to go to the University of South Florida. I came down to visit and I looked around. I'm like, oh yeah, fun in the sun.
Yeah, blue skies. I mean, what's there not to love about this place, right?
So I packed up my car and drove down and started going to school at USF. Well, won't bore you with all the details, but I ended up going to school for hospitality management. So I moved around quite a bit because USF didn't have a program at the time. So I went to FIU for a little while, came back to USF once they opened up the program for my senior year. But I graduated from USF with a hospitality management degree.
So FIU, Boca, so you were on the East Coast for a little bit too. So you got
for 2 semesters.
So you got a little bit of Florida, both sides.
Miami flavor.
Miami, yeah. South Beach and spring break and all that crazy.
All the things.
All those crazy times.
Yeah,
that's kind of what I did growing up too. That's kind of what exposed me to Florida was spring break in the 80s. My parents' friends, they all had condos. I lived in Jersey, and they all had these condos on the beach as like second or third homes. And so the kids would be like, "Hey, we're going to go down to spring break, and we could stay at my parents' condo." I'm like, "All right, I'm in." $99 was round trip. We could go. It was People's Express back in the day, and it's like blue skies, not gray sky, and people are happy and hardly have any clothes on. It's like, what's there not to love about this place?
Right. As a 20-year-old man,
as a 20-year-old man, you're like, come on. And it hooked me. So it sounds like it hooked you too.
Yeah, I fell in love with it. I moved down here and I got my degree. And then pretty quickly, as I was wrapping up my degree, realized that hospitality management wasn't going to get me where I wanted to go.
Well, let's back up a little bit.
Yeah.
You said you were kind of lost a little bit. Well, two things. Why did you pick hospitality management?
Because I don't like math. It's basically a business degree without calculus.
Okay, so you kind of shied away from anything, math or science related. You didn't want to deal with that.
And it felt like it got me to a business degree
without. And you kind of knew you wanted a business degree versus a Bachelor of Arts degree. Yeah. Did you have that in your mind?
Yeah. I just kind of knew. I was like, I'd probably go into sales or something, right? It was kind of more my thoughts, but no real direction. But there wasn't any. I didn't have a passion for anything specific.
When did the switch turn on? You said you were kind of floundering.
Mm-hmm.
When did the switch turn on for you, timeline wise?
Well, I was always working hard. I was money motivated. Like I said, I was kind of on my own, so I was working multiple jobs through college, doing all that kind of stuff. When I got out of college, I got my first job. I actually had to move back to Philadelphia because I had a hard time finding anything as your first job down here. I was doing door-to-door credit card processing sales in the summer in Tampa.
Wow.
Did that for the summer and looked around and said, because the idea of residual income, create wealth, I was kind of sold on that vision. But door-to-door at the local strip malls wasn't going to get me there. And so I kind of stopped and did some reflection. Like, where am I really going to go moving forward? So at the end of the day, all my network and family and friends are in Philadelphia. So I need to get back there, leverage that for my first job, right? I mean, to see if I can find something, and which I did. I ended up getting to move back into my mom's house with $1,000 in my pocket, working at a restaurant, Dave & Buster's up there, while looking for my job. Ended up getting a job with a guy who was doing a startup staffing company called McGrath Systems. His name is Mike Wiley. She's still friends with him today. He's a mentor of mine. I was the third employee in the company. So he was the owner, there was one other employee, and then there was me. And we worked in this basement of he's a startup. I mean, he didn't have any money, right? But he promised me that at the end of my second year, if I did everything he said, I'd be making $75,000 a year from that point forward or more, right? I was like, great. Who do I got to kill to make that happen? Like, I'm in. No one I know makes that kind of money. To me, that was, that's that would be the best case scenario. It's a great living, right? So I did everything he said. I was making $29,000 a year, working 60 plus hours a week in a basement building, just nonstop dialing phones all day, every day. It was a tough place. But what I found by doing that was I got a front row seat to a startup that ended up becoming really successful.
So this is such a great nugget. It goes back to a couple of, I think, a couple of interesting points. You intrinsically recognize the fact that you're in Florida, you're postgraduate, you're not getting anywhere, you don't have the connections with regard to a potential career.
Yeah.
So you have the wherewithal to basically turn your world upside down, but you're going to go back home and you're going to try to establish or reconnect with people because you're a known entity or your family is a known entity. One way or the other, there'll be some synergy with somebody, and then bam, something happens. You probably knew nothing about staffing at the time.
Nothing.
And you were willing to work, and somebody obviously knew who you were, this guy that your mentor now, knew and believed in you. So that's a really good point, because sometimes people don't realize that. People don't realize that their family, their friends, their connections that they have, if they're introspective, and you had to put your tail between your legs a little bit too with that, right? Because you all this bravado, I'm going out on my own, I'm moving out of state, right? So how did you balance that with going in and then saying, okay, I'm going to be humble with regard to my expectations? Yeah. That's another issue we deal with, right? We deal with this idea of immediate gratification. So how did you reconcile that when you took this job, you're back at home and you're going through that period of time in your life?
I would say my ability to hold a vision and do the work for long periods of time is fundamental in my success in multiple ways. I can explain that. So I knew that ultimately I wanted to earn more. And from my upbringing, right? Okay, so I'm broke living back this is my whole life. What do I care, right? I've always been broke, you know what I mean? We always were happy. For all our trials and tribulations, we were happy. I mean, you don't need money to be happy. You got family, you got friends. I've got the best friends in the world. We're incredibly loyal to each other, great family, cousins, all that kind of stuff. So, you know what? It's just life again, right? So I moved away, did all that thing, but I'm back at home and I'm broke. Okay, this is all I really knew anyway. So from the humble perspective, yeah, it's a little humbling, but at the same time, it was like, this is just what I got to do. And like I said, I was brought up, you do what you got to do. I mean, that's just how life is, especially when you don't come from money or, things aren't handed to you. You do what you got to do.
So you weren't necessarily like defining yourself with regard to your bank account back then or anything like that. You were just trying to kind of navigate and figure out where your next step would be. But in the aggregate, you were in a good place with regard to your mindset and your life itself. In other words, you weren't struggling with, you didn't have substantial debt to deal with. You didn't have a spouse or a partner that's giving you pressure. This was you trying to navigate your life individually at basically the beginning of
when I moved back to Philadelphia, I broke up with my girlfriend, my long-term girlfriend from college, who was now my wife, by the way.
Oh, okay.
To do that, because I recognized that, to your point, I couldn't make the decisions I needed to make at that point in my life as a 3-year-old person, right? Who just was like, I need to make decisions for me and me alone at this time, right? As much as I love you, I can't make these life-altering decisions and account for your feelings right now. Like I need to get my life in order. This is not, conducive to me being successful ultimately with where I always kind of knew I wanted more out of life. I mean, that I was sure of. May have lost my way a few times, but at the end of the day, I knew I wanted more and I could do more. So I get back home and I just dig in. I start doing the work. I work the network. I get this job. And from that perspective, it was just about that goal. If I do everything you're going to say in 70, by the end of my second year, I'll make 75 grand. Great. I just put my head down for 2 years and did that. I surpassed that goal and got a front row seat to a startup going from 0 to 6 million a year in like 3.5 years. Wow. Was a foundational part of that. Got to see every piece of that business right there. I mean, there's no greater mentorship in the world, right? I mean, it could took me 2 decades to get that kind of experience.
Exactly. So share with our listeners and viewers some of the things that you guys went through. Just a couple of bullet points.
One of the biggest challenges for us was, believe it or not, well, 2 things: lines of credit and office space. When you're growing that fast, no one believes you.
Yeah.
Good luck trying to get a bank to keep increasing your line every 3 months.
Banks only give you money when you don't need it.
Right, exactly. And we were growing so fast, it was like, well, it was kind of like freaking them out. So, I mean, I would watch him he spent half his time renegotiating office space and dealing with banks just so that we could continue the growth that we were having. While I was out there pounding the pavements, finding new clients, delivering on, this staffing with a couple of the guys as we started growing. So I got to see that up front. Got to see some right and wrong ways to do it. I mean, we were a grinded up shop, and we turned over 100% of our team members in the year that I was there. So like only the strong survived. That was the model. If you're not going to be here, you're not. That's that. We had a guy come in and left at noon and said, "You guys are too intense. I'm out of here."
So you really did learn a lot of different things, because when you think about entrepreneurship and business, and people are starting their new business wherever they are in their journey. The hiring and firing issue is huge. The recognition of the right candidate or the right person you're going to bring in is so important. You deal with so many issues at times with staffing challenges, having the right person, keeping them on too long with the hope that they may, change, turn the corner. The banking issues that there's so many factors. It can be tremendously overwhelming. How did you and your mentor, how did you guys manage the day-to-day of that type of stuff?
The leadership skills kind of really had to come forward, right? For me, because he had to lead the overall company. But as we grew, I had to take on team members. So within the first 2 years out of college, my first job, I'm hiring, I'm firing.
And you're young, very young. So how do these people take you seriously as part of that too? Because I'm sure you were hiring people older than you.
Somewhat, but a lot of them were younger, and people always thought I was older. That was They just assumed I was older based on
maybe your predisposition and how you
I was pretty tough. I learned later in my career that I was kind of a prick, to be honest with you, Keith. I was brutal.
Well, when you say that, what do you mean?
Like if I looked out in the office and I saw someone not on the phone, I would walk up, pick up their phone, dial it, like, "Yep, it still works. How about you pick it up?"
Okay,
things like that, or. I just didn't tolerate, because I was working. That was the pace I worked at, and that was the pace my mentor worked at. And for me, that's just how we had to work, right? It's like I came from this world where like hard work, you got to carry. So, listen, if I'm going to carry shovel and cement or bricks or whatever, I can pick up a phone all day. That's easy to me. I'm like, whatever. right? So I just got to keep dialing this thing all day. Great, I'll do that. And when I saw people not doing that, I'm like, what are you, lazy? Your finger's broken? Like, dial the thing. It's not going to dial itself. And I didn't really, the whole idea of being soft and, collegiate with people and be like, well, what, are you having a bad day today? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Do you need, no, we don't do that here.
I don't think it really, call me naive, but I don't think that works in a startup, nor do I think it works when you're trying to, grow a business from zero. You need to have the strength. That's why they say the founders of a particular company are much different, and they have a team. And we could talk a little bit about this because I know you've done this, but you transition into different places, right? So you've got, like, I remember when I worked at this insurance company, the company had acquired another company. It was a California-based insurance company, acquired a company in Florida, wanted to basically change the culture in Florida of the company. And when I look back in retrospect, for me, I was a change agent. Mm-hmm. They basically hired me to come in and make changes to the existing environment. But once those changes were made, unbeknownst to me, my style and approach was no longer needed. In other words, the manner in which I managed and how I led was not what they wanted going forward once the change took place. Right. They wanted more of a robotic individual who would just stay the course versus somebody who is always pushing for more and different, because they had developed their plateau and how they wanted their particular vision of their business to run. So when you're in a startup and you're, call yourself a prick, call yourself whatever you want to call yourself, you don't have a choice, because it's feast or famine basically, and what you're doing. And if people aren't going to be part of that, get the hell out, move out of the way. I'll find somebody who can do that.
Pretty much.
So that happens. Your demeanor has to change at some point in time as you continue to grow and evolve in your career.
Yeah. So I end up, that company, I end up reconnecting with my girlfriend, who's now my wife.
Okay.
She's from Detroit originally. She said she moved to Philadelphia with me during this period of time. And it's important to note, I was so focused on business then, and like just achieving, I ballooned to 100. I'm 5'6". I was 190 pounds, zero muscle on my body, never exercised. I sat in a chair for 12 hours a day, ordered in food the whole time, completely became a shell of myself, right? And got a little unhappy too. I mean, it was just...
Yeah, I'm sure depression can kick in, a lot of different things.
Yeah, right? And so, she's like, I want to get back to Tampa, right? And so that gentleman let me open an office in Tampa. And this was right around 2008. So I came down here, opened an office in Tampa for him. And we were doing light industrial manufacturing engineering in the middle of an economic collapse here in Tampa. So didn't really go well. It was a long year. I fired myself. Called him up one day. I said, hey, man, you're throwing money away over here. Like I've done everything I know how to do and what I can do. And I think we just need to shut it down. You need to focus your efforts back there. I appreciate the opportunity, et cetera.
Wow.
And I moved on. I put my resume out and I got a call from a local company here called K-Force. And that's how I got into
K-Force is a staffing company,
right?
Yeah,
they're a multi-billion, or definitely at least $1 billion when I was there, international staffing company, yeah. And I got a job in their healthcare division supporting medical records coding for hospitals throughout the country.
So this was 2008. So bring me to where you were in your relationship, because we talk about relationships and the impact of relationships in an entrepreneur's life. And you had a come here, go away relationship in the beginning. Obviously, it worked out. So tell me a little bit about how you navigated that.
Yeah. So, well, talk about humility, right? I mean, at one point when I was up there, and once I kind of got myself settled and I'm looking around, well, I don't want my life without her, right? So I had a hat in hand, call her up and say, hey, if you still want to be with me, I'm here. I'm building a life. I'd love for you to be part of it. And she decided to do that. She took a big risk and came to see me. So I honored that when she wanted. She's like, I'm not ultimately happy here in Philadelphia. I like it. Family's great and all that, but I want to be back in Tampa for all the reasons we talked about before, right? Little sunshine. So, I looked around and said, well, I'm not really happy right now. I'm out of shape. I'm, kind of getting burned out a little bit, et cetera. Let's see if we can make this happen, right? And so I pushed to make it happen and get down to Florida and open that business. And then we ended up, so I started with K-Force in April of 2009, and we got married in November of 2009.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, was she involved in, other than a supportive spouse, was she involved in any of the business side with you, or she did her own thing?
No, she did her own thing. At the time, she was a pharmaceutical sales rep.
Okay.
And she worked for a company called Cheering Plow. You ever see the microchips they put in pets?
Yeah.
That's what she did. That's what she went all around the Philadelphia area doing that. And when she came back here, she worked for Alcon, selling like eye products and different things like that to physicians.
Well, pharmaceutical sales was back at that time too, was heavy marketing.
She beat out like 250 other people.
Very competitive market in that too. So she obviously has the drive and probably a lot of the traits that attracted you to her because of how she was and how you are.
Yeah.
So you get involved with K-Force, and to me, that's the signal, I guess, because I know what ended up happening to you with your career, but you get into the hospital field. A little bit about that in staffing. So talk a little bit about that.
So I start to get that, and now I'm just my only career to this point has been at a startup, right? And a boiler room kind of grinded up sort of startup. Boom, I get dropped into a $1 billion company with corporate culture, and it's a little bit more laissez-faire than what I was used to. So I quickly got the nickname McNasty, I think, in my second week, because I was just challenging people. The culture we had before was like, if you're not being challenged, then you're not growing. And if you're not growing, then business isn't going where it needs to be. So I got exposed to that sort of thing. I had to that's when I learned the interpersonal skills to deal with people of different personalities. I didn't have the ability to hire and fire and do whatever I wanted there, right?
Did they have an HR department?
Yeah.
So did you have to deal with, I remember when I was with the insurance company, they had an HR department, and there was so much focus, and I had a hard time dealing with it, on so many extrinsic issues that were not substantive to the business. And what I mean by that is, how are people feeling? How do you motivate people? Let's do a Myers-Briggs test and see what their personality is. What's their learning style? How are you communicating, Keith, as a leader? I mean, on and on. Mind you, I could mandate from the CEO that we're paying $15 million a year. You need to get that down to $5 million a year. Right. But I'm getting shipped to California to have kumbaya sessions with the other executives while Rome is burning, in my mind. Right. So I had to reconcile those issues. It sounds to me like you kind of went through a similar circumstance with K-Force.
But I wasn't in a leadership position. So I went there as a business development person, which was fine. But again, all those same things still had to be applied, right? I still had to learn to deal with and work within that group. I had a leader who was very adept at managing the politics of a large organization. And he just kind of beat that in my head. He said, you can't fight every fight, man.
That's a skill set that I right? Yeah. That's a skill set.
It was a skill I learned.
I think that people who are able to survive in those corporate environments, it's either situational ethics or it's just the ability to be numb in some respects. To be what we entrepreneur business people, we have different DNA. People want to do that stuff. God bless them. They're on their own in that world. But to me, it's just a slow death. I don't know how they do it. But, obviously, there's a lot more people doing that than what we do.
Yeah, well, I think fear holds a lot of people back. I think a lot of these things that you and I would be naturally, it would be impossible for us not to say. I was always challenging everything still, but I just learned how to do it a little bit more effectively and I guess politically correct, right?
Yeah.
So I just kind of tempered that. I learned that skill set, and I learned a lot about healthcare and the revenue cycle of hospitals and how they get reimbursed. And one of the things I really learned is I like to learn. And so that, again, is one of those key things that has helped me. So whenever there was a new, I get bored easily too. Once I master something, I'm good. So I was good at sales, one of the top performers, and I'm like bored. And they're like, hey, we're going to roll out this new consulting service. It was a big ICD-10 was a big transition. I'm like, great. I'm like pouring into it. To my own detriment from a financial perspective, right? I wasn't making, everyone else is like, what are you doing? Just keep selling staffing. That's where we're making our money. Why are you trying to do all this? But I learned. I gained a new skill set. I eventually left there to go work for a consulting firm where I traveled around the country with a former insurance company and hospital executives, meeting with Florida Blue and these big insurance companies, selling our consulting services. We did like claim system adjudication and master data management. So I learned all about data management. And I learned all about the insurance side. So now I've got hospital experience, insurance experience. I'm learning executive lingo. And, that was a trial by fire. I'd be sitting in these meetings, writing down notes of all the words I didn't understand.
But you aren't afraid, which is very important. I always tell people, and one of my adages is lean into the uncomfortable and you diffuse it, basically. So
100%.
you weren't afraid of the things you didn't know, and you knew that could create strength in you. You could develop strength in yourself by learning those things that you didn't know. A lot of people shy away from that. So this is like you essentially kind of building your foundation in so many different areas to become even stronger in what you end up, eventually doing. But how is your wife at the time when you're making all these changes in your life? Is she supportive? Is she a naysayer? How is that?
She's pretty supportive. So, I was very supportive of her. After the pharmaceutical job, right around the time I was at K-Force, my wife played online poker quite a bit. They had like a downsizing at the pharmaceutical company. She was without work and started playing online poker. Was doing really well. So for 2 years, she just played online poker.
She could making money on online poker
until they changed some of the laws. Yeah. At the time, she was doing fine, and I'm like, I'll support that. Whatever you want to do, if that's your passion, then go for it. Just know that one day I'm going to go start a business, and I need you to support me, right? And she trusts me to make good decisions ultimately, right? So I explained what I was doing, did it. She gave me the support. She knew I'd figure it out. I think she just has faith in me to do what I got to do. She knows I'm not going to, fold up if it gets hard, right?
Yeah.
So, did that job. And then we had our first child right when I was starting that consulting job, and I was traveling 4 days a week all over the country, like just constant. Realized that wasn't very conducive for a young family and my marriage. So ended up, like we talked about, using the network. People I used to work with at K-Force had transitioned to other companies within the space. I reached back out and said, hey, I'm in the market. And to your point, I don't think I filled out an application ever since I went to K-Force. Or I think I got recruited to go to K-Force too. So ever since then, I never had to go apply to a job or, any of those sort of things. I had made a reputation for someone who could add value to a business and people. And the second I said, hey, I'm looking for something, and multiple people say, hey, I'll make a spot for you over here, right? So I went to another company called, at the time, Precise Solutions, and they used to actually do business process outsourcing within the hospital revenue cycle. So now it's like I do the staffing, I can provide consulting, and I know how to outsource these departments. This is a pretty robust experience now that I've gained through this thirst for knowledge and this ability to kind of really, I left money on the table every time I made one of these transitions. The smarter short-term financial play would have been stay there, keep growing my book of business, keep putting that money in my pocket. But like you said, it's a slow path to death. I mean, I'll make more money now, but I'm going to be working till I'm 65 in this cube farm. Then I'm going to maybe retire and get a couple good years. And like, to me, no way.
So you saw the writing on the wall with these companies. You kind of knew you needed more.
The more I did it, the more I realized it wasn't for me.
Yeah.
I struggled with, keeping quiet and playing the game. And I was just like, it was making me crazy, and I was like, so I just thought, I got to do something. The only real way there's two paths, right? You can either keep stacking your chips and make smart investments and do the long game. I'm not very patient, so long game isn't for me. Or you can start a business. And those are kind of the real paths to wealth, right? Unless you're going to inherit money, which wasn't happening for me. So I made up my mind, I'm going to start something. And I was burned out from staffing at the time. And I was like, I don't even think I was looking in the car washes. I met with Chick-fil-A owners. I was meeting with car wash. I didn't care what it was. I was going to do something. Start a franchise. I didn't care. So I ended up, one of my old coworkers from K-Force, stayed in touch with him. We were talking and he's like, I think there's an opportunity. Let's just start a staffing company. Let's do it. He left a really good job. I mean, he basically the same path as me. I mean, he left hundreds of thousands of dollars on the table. We both were making a couple $100,000 a year at the time. Quit our jobs, both had young children at home, sole providers for our families, and left and started the company.
So you guys both took the risk.
Yeah.
You both took the risk.
Yeah.
I talk a little bit about partnerships too, and the synergies and how important it is to vet your partner. And you basically need to know everything about your partner, the person you're going into business with, and watch this individual when they don't know you're watching them, and see how they interact with strangers and other people, because partnership, a marriage, obviously is the most important decision you can make with your spouse, but a business partner is in line with that or close to. You sometimes spend more time.
1A and 1B.
Yeah, exactly.
For sure.
So how did you vet your partner other than knowing him through work?
Well, we actually had a really long, protracted negotiation process.
Okay.
Believe it or not, where
I believe it.
he went off. We had talked about doing it together, and I was a little fearful still at the time. I was like up for this vice president role. I'm like, let me see if I can get this and gain some VP experience. And then I think maybe after a year, I'll be ready to start. All the procrastination excuses people make for themselves. Really, at the end of the day, I didn't give myself enough credit for what I could be capable of. I did all
That's a little bit of that imposter syndrome we talked about, huh?
Right? I was like, well, if I gain this skill and I do this, right? And if I just keep, and I think people spend way too much time doing it. You got to trust yourself to figure out a solution. At the time, I didn't earn that yet. He, on the other hand, he's wild. He goes, I'm doing it. He quits, does it. So he goes about 6 months before I'm there, but we're talking the whole time. I'm helping him, provide strategy. We're talking through problems, just trying to be of value. And he's having a little bit of success, got some things going. He's like, man, I need a partner. Like, let's revisit this thing. Like, are you ready to come in now and that kind of thing? So if we're going to if I want to take this where I need to go, I need someone who cares about this business as much as I do. And trying to hire people just isn't going to get me there. I need a real partner who can add value. And that's when I took the leap of faith and did that. So he started in like March, and it was like December when I started.
So when you went in with him, were lawyers involved? Were contracts involved? How did you handle that?
We did an operating agreement, right? And it was a back and forth negotiation quite a bit. But what I learned from that was, those are sensitive topics to talk
Very
about,
sensitive.
equity and work and all these sort of things, right? We never once had a real disagreement during that process, or we both were respectful of each other throughout that process. We were empathetic to each other. I understand where you're coming from, but here's why it's important for me. And if you can get through all that without having an ounce of contentiousness or any of that sort of stuff, I was like, okay, he is the person I thought he is, right? Or I thought he was, right? And really, I think in any partnership, whether it's your spouse or like a partner, it really comes down to who they are. What are their core values? How do they operate? Are they ethical? I think as a leader, it's the single most important thing you can do. You have to be able to live your values. And I can tell you unequivocally that is the foundation for why we were so successful. We basically co-CEO'd. No one even knew who really ran the company. Both of us did for 7 years. And everyone says you can't do that. We're proof that you absolutely can.
Well,
it just takes a little bit of humility.
Well, yeah, the humility and the trust in the individual that you become a partner with, which takes time to develop, obviously, and through the negotiations, whatever it is. Had another guest on, firm believer in the partnership, brings other things, firm believer in the idea that the partner can bring other things to the table, and, introspective in that you as the other partner need to work just as hard. You both have this vision of what you want to do. I use the analogy of, okay, you've got this potted plant and you've planted you put the seed in for this plant, and it's this like fictional. This partnership is this fictional idea and concept of an entity. And you and your partner, no matter what, are going to safeguard that plant to ensure that that plant grows. Do whatever needs to be done, even to the detriment of yourself, because you covet that particular plant to grow. It's how I view my relationship with my wife. It's a bubble. It's my wife and I. We don't outschool things. We don't talk about things out. We work within ourselves, communicate about any issues that we have. So if you are lucky enough to have a partner that views the partnership that way, and it sounds like you had that, that is gold. That is the ticket. Many people can't get there. Unfortunately, I couldn't get there with an ex-business partner. But I see it flourishing. You could have 30, 35, 40, 50 year careers with partners. In fact, you could have multiple partners in the field if you do your due diligence and if they have the same vision and goal. Now, life gets in the way in many respects. Did you have any challenges with that you had to navigate, either with you or your partner? Divorce, deaths, things like that.
Yeah, well, children, right? I had
children,
a second child. My wife went through some challenges. We had problems conceiving. So for 3.5 years of the beginning of me starting a business, we were struggling with miscarriages and, trying to conceive and going to fertility doctors, which can be all consuming and challenging. You know, and my wife went through hormonal challenges. So my marriage was struggling. There was times where I wasn't being the best husband, right? Or being empathetic to her needs. And you know, I was so focused on the business that sometimes you go, well, you know, why aren't you carrying your weight at home, right? Why is this not, perfect? And instead of doing what a real leader would do in my home, like I wasn't treating my home like my business. If I had an employee who was struggling, and said, how do I support you? What do you need? What skills don't you have? How can I get you there, right? What can we do? With my wife, I was just like, well, why aren't you Martha Stewart, right?
Yeah,
like I'm like,
yeah.
I should have Martha Stewart at home. I'm over here doing this.
Yeah.
Right? Well, she was never Martha Stewart. I was like, I had this unfair expectation of her, and I stopped valuing what I loved most about her. All I started to do was focus on the things that weren't going well.
Yeah.
And it took me a mind shift in 2020 where I was just like, what are you doing? I read Jocko Willink's a book called Extreme Ownership. And it's all about leadership. And at the end of the day, everything stops with you. And it helped me with my employees, and I focused it on my family as well. And I said, okay, I'm going to dig in. This is a me problem. And change always starts with yourself. I think people far too often are pointing out, and they need to be using their thumbs.
Yeah, that's
right
such
back
a good, Brian, that's such a good point. It really does. You have to be introspective in so many respects.
Yeah.
Sometimes people will bounce from relationship to relationship, and they don't even take care of, they're not realizing that the problem, you need to take care of yourself, is you.
Yeah.
Is yourself. You're not going to find somebody that's going to fill that cup until you take care of yourself personally. It's the oddest phenomenon. You think about that people don't see that. But that takes humility. It takes introspection. It takes a tremendous amount of self-reflection to do that, and maturity as well, I think.
Well, I could go back to this. I think it's very akin to what we're talking about with the partnership, right? And having one of the foundational things I think for a business and to create good culture and leadership is a shared mission. So in the business, the reason me and him were able to put aside our personal goals, be humble, do whatever needed to be done for the business. At the end of the day, that was the mission. That was the priority. We were second, right? Same thing in my life. Me and my wife have both, our shared mission is that to live a life of fulfillment and happiness, right? And not have that kind of strife. And, we want to live an ideal life that to pursue the potential that we have in all these things, right? And when we have that, when that's the goal, now you can be introspective and humble. Okay, well, what's going to support that? Well, it's going to take me digging in. And marriage isn't 50-50. Partnerships are not 50-50. There's going to be times where you might have to carry more weight than they are. In my business relationship, there was times where I could tell he was burned out and checking out. There's no conversation needed. Guess what? I just worked harder. I picked up the slack. And there's times where I was a little checked out and burned out and just couldn't handle it. He never had to say anything. He didn't have to be like, hey man, I'm doing extra here. No, he just did more. Because why? Shared mission, the goal. We're going to get there. And he knew I'd come around, right? And sometimes you need a little bit of a break. When you're going that hard, there's no real breaks, right? But sometimes you just got to let off the gas a little bit because you're just going to.
Well, it's that symbiotic. It's that symbiotic relationship that you've developed where you're both going back and forth as you move forward. Yeah. With like you said, the mission.
It just naturally happened. We just knew what needed to happen, and we would just help each other out, right?
So let's go.
I adopted that in my marriage as well.
So let's go. So you essentially navigated and shared with us, how you reconciled. You've got so many things going on, right, in your life. Was there ever a time where you and your partner were, and you're talking about on your business side, where you guys said, let's sell this? Or was that the plan from day one? Or tell me,
I tell people
that
this
evolve?
All the time, design with the end in mind. And I can tell you it was crucial to our success that we had a plan from day one before we started. We wanted to be a $20 million business in 5 to 7 years and exit.
Oh, so you knew right away that's what you wanted to do.
Oh, yeah, 100%. It was not a lifestyle business. It was an asset we were going to create to sell, and we designed it that way.
I talk about this concept that success is not static. And what I mean by that is people think that they need to achieve something, and then they sit on a shelf of success, and that's it. And then they have the glory of life while they're on that shelf. And I said, that's bullshit. There's no such thing as having static success. You have these aspirations, you hit here, you want to go, you just keep going. You just keep going in different ways. So How did you have the vision develop so early on that you weren't necessarily creating a retirement home in your business for yourself? Like, how did you have this, like, where did you think this came from? Because it's like a serial entrepreneur approach, you know?
In a word, freedom.
Okay.
I wanted freedom from the mundane rat race of life. And the only way I could figure it out there was become so financially successful that I could do whatever I want, with whoever I want, whenever I want. And selling the business was that. If I keep a business running till I'm, 60 and keep it going, I probably don't get that, right? I'm always tied to this thing. So my broader plan was, I'm going to create this asset. And much like you said, there's levels to this thing. This was just phase one in a much larger plan for me. I want to impact the world, and, I'm going to need capital to do it. And so it was like, yeah, I could keep it going, or I could take this large lump sum of capital, figure out a strategy for how I can exponentially grow that again. And the more that I can do that, the more impact I can have.
When does the light come on for you and your partner and say, okay, it's time? Because that's a magic moment for a lot of entrepreneurs that they can't figure that out, or they miss the mark. Remember Yahoo back in the day?
Yeah. I mean, so we were in year 7, right? And we ended up doing a little over $50 million in revenue in year 7. So
incredible.
We've blown past the target. So we sold in year 7 was 2022. We sold halfway through that year. We saw our run rate was just exponential growth. I mean, we were on a rocket ship just shooting up. And, all of our advisors, everyone's like, what are you doing? You don't want to sell this thing. Why don't you sell part of it and then go private equity and keep growing? But we stuck to our vision. Sell this thing, have freedom. That's the goal, right? I don't get that if I keep going, right? So we decided to keep that going and stick with that mission. So that's really why we did it. It was like, we've achieved the goal. Let's respect ourselves, right? Let's honor what we talked about. And, it's this more holistic approach to wealth, right? I could have chased more money for sure, but I would have continued to, not be as present with my family or my wife as well as we did. I didn't miss any events or any of that kind of stuff, but my brain was always on that business. My son's talking to me and I'm a little bit not all there, right? Where now I'm 100% engaged, right? So it was this idea of, I want this life of freedom. And if I hold on to this thing and chase money, I'm not going to get it. And if that's our shared mission, then we're going to do it. That's what we'll do. So
you obviously, both of you had this agreement that this was going to happen, mm-hmm. and you were going to do this. And with the charts going up, obviously that's the best time across the board. People would say, well, wait till it goes even higher. Well, at the end of the day, you got to make a decision. Yeah. Because it can only go one. It can go down too. You think about that.
Well, part of it was we looked ahead and we said, okay, we can do that, right? We can make investments and grow, but now we're tacking on another decade to our runway here. And for us, at the end of the day, freedom was the most important thing. We've achieved the goal. Anything beyond this is, what I say, pigs get fed, hogs get slaughtered.
Yeah, I use that adage all the time.
And we just kind of said to each other, hey man, we did it.
And he agreed with you 100%?
We went back and forth. We were like, man, I don't know. We hold on for another year, now the number's this, and that's a big number and all this stuff. But time, at the end of the day, we kept looking at it and saying, I want to be able to move on, right, with my life and have these other plans. And we don't get there if we continue to chase money.
So for people who are in at that point in their careers where, they were, deciding, an equity group comes in and they want to purchase their company and they don't know what to do. It happens a lot in different industries. What would you tell those people to help them as far as their decision-making process? What are a couple of ideas or suggestions you could give them?
Well, we talked about introspection, and I think it's really important to figure out the life you want to live. We get one go around on the spinning rock hurling through outer space, right? I mean, that's it. And it's real easy to listen to society and all the subconscious things that are fried into our brain from the time we're babies that I need to achieve to wealth and all these things to be successful. I think you need to stop and ask yourself, what's your true definition of wealth and what's going to make you happy? And I think a lot of times you're going to realize that chasing a couple extra dollars is going to be to your detriment in the long run. So for me, it was like really focusing on what is most important to me. What type of life do I want to live? And it was like chasing dollars is not it. It was, I mean, I thought I was money motivated, so I made some money. And I started making money, and I'm like, I'm not money motivated. I just like to win. I like the game. I have this, I like creating. I had this vision for a company. I had this goal, and we achieved it. That fulfillment, there's no greater feeling. It wasn't that there was dollars in my bank account.
There's another thing I usually say, find your passion and the money will come.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily focus, you can't focus on the money grab. You have to focus on your passion and whatever's driving you to do things. And eventually it'll develop. You just have to have that clarity and believe in yourself.
And I think people make the mistake of like what we do for like hospital revenue cycle is not my passion, right? Creation, leadership, achieve, like those, I'm passionate about that. Right, so the vehicle can be anything you want it to be.
Anything.
Yeah, you just have to find where you get the joy out of it, right? And then I grew as a leader and watching team members grow and advance their careers. I mean, gosh, when we sold the company, you know, we gave away about 5% and not gave away. My team members earned about 5% of the equity in the business when we sold. I mean, that paid for some of their kids to go to college. Yeah. Well, my one team member early on, her name's Jenny, awesome person. I mean, just a foundational element to our success, right? Day one, she goes, I'll quit my job. I'll come work with you guys. I'll take this risk. My son's a super genius and I want him to go to MIT or some sort of tech school and I want to be able to pay for it, right? Fast forward, he's actually going into college the year we sell. We're able to cut a check that pays for 4 years of college and then some.
Wow.
He goes to Georgia Tech. I just got an email from her yesterday. He was in an accelerator program, got awarded first place, got a $50,000 accelerator grant. He's working with entrepreneurs over there to start his like tech business. I mean, talk about having a vision and making it come. Dude, I felt great selling my business. I talk about that all the time.
That's a great story.
So much joy. Like it brings me so much joy to watch her. I mean, we have other people who, younger people, my team that we groomed up who were incredible hard workers who've made more money than executives do. I mean, just because of how hard they work. Yeah, they put in the time. But they've got young families, they've got houses that are paid off. I mean, they've set themselves up with an amazing future. And what I always told people was like, you're gonna come work for me. I can't guarantee you're gonna make this kind of money. But what I can guarantee you is that I'm gonna give you an environment and the opportunity to do it yourself. And delivering on that promise is the best feeling in the world. Knowing that people's lives change because we created an environment where they could be their best selves and achieve their life goals.
I think what happens as we get older in life is that if we can impact people in a positive way, there's no greater, for me as well. That's why I love doing the show. I mean, it's just one of those things where when you can see people that light click on for people, or you see their successes in different ways, and it's not just monetary. There's so much more to it than monetary. Getting money and making money, you know, you can acquire things. I tell people, things don't make people happy. You may think they do, but they don't. It's, you know, once you get to a point in your life where you're responsible and you have your living expenses taken care of and you're in a good place, you know, having a third or fourth car, having another, that's not what, if you can actually have an impact on a human being in a positive way, that is an ultimate high.
Yeah, I said something to my brother one time. We were just talking and he's like, why do you do what you do? And I'm like, just kind of off the cuff. I was like, man, it's about the life I want to live, not the things I want to have. And he goes, dude, that's pretty great.
That is, that is good.
I'm like, yeah, I should quote that one. Good. But the reality is that's it. I mean, I want to create the life that I want to live. I have this little voice in my head that says, like, this is your potential, right? There's a great quote, and it's a little longer than this, but in summation, it basically says, hell is getting the end of your life and seeing the person you could have been. And heaven is seeing yourself in your reflection. You know, I'm kind of paraphrasing, but that motivates me. I mean, to no end. I mean, I'm chasing that little voice in my head that says, this is your potential as a father, as a leader, as a husband, as an entrepreneur, with my health. I mean, I do insane stuff, like working out. Like I get up at 4 a.m. I'm technically retired. I don't know how many retired people, you know, get up at 4 a.m. to train. I do it every day because I know I have that capability. And I'd be wasting my life if I did not try and live up to the expectation or my potential.
We talk about exercise and physical fitness, and I've had John for a while. And we've had some really good discussion points. I want to touch base on this because you shared with us that you had a period of your life. I had a period, I call it the 10-year fog, where I wasn't training, I wasn't exercising. I think I was in a depression. I was in a terrible marriage at the time. you had this period of time where you were overweight and you made changes. You obviously, you're a shell of what you were, you look great. Talk a little bit about fitness and exercise, and how that has helped you through your career. Because I know for me, it's been a godsend. And I've been, 40 plus years training and working out. It just changes, for me, it changes the whole dynamic of who I am. It provides me with inner confidence. It provides me with a feeling of accomplishment. It provides me with balance. I mentor and consult and help people on the fitness, especially people who want to try to get motivated more, share ideas. Doesn't matter where they are in their fitness cycle. If just starting a little bit, whatever it is. But talk about it with you now, especially since it's
been transformational in my life. Not my business, my family, everything. I can't describe it in a way other than to say that it is the foundational element for everything I do. And people talk about, and it's just like a phrase people throw out there, well, without your health, you don't have wealth. But really think about that, right? When you get one life, people spend their whole careers trying to get money, getting out of shape, they're depressed, they're not happy, there's all these things. So what's the point, right? If you can't have all of that, then, it doesn't make sense to me. I use it as a way we talk about the self-introspection, right? So I'll get up early, I'll go for a run. It's pitch black, the world isn't awake. I know I'm awake. One, I already feel like I'm accomplishing something. And from a competitive perspective, I'm like, there's no.
You're ahead.
I'm already ahead. I'm going to be at my desk 2 hours before the rest of you, and I've already got my workout in. So there's that kind of component to it. Plus, your endorphins kick in. My energy levels are through the roof. I mean, there's no one who's going to outwork me. I could go all day, every day, and on 6 hours of sleep. That's all I do. I sleep from 10 to 4, and I rinse and repeat, and I could work all day if I needed to.
Have you always been like that? With when you're going through? So well, how about post when you had the last company you sold? Did you integrate fitness in your lifestyle during those years? Yeah,
so I had always kind of worked out and kept fitness. So we started in 2015. It was 2020. We lost 50% of our business in 6 weeks with COVID because we were supporting hospitals. I kind of fell in some of these old habits again. I was working out and stuff, but it wasn't like...
COVID had a tough impact, I think, on all of us.
Yeah, and I'm very much a freedom-loving patriot, and I felt like, I was like, what are we doing?
Yeah, exactly.
And so that was degrading me, and just the news, everything was just making me angry, and all this.
We were all snowed.
Yeah, and started drinking a little bit more, started working out a little less, kind of got angry and depressed a little bit. I'm like, everything I worked for is going down. Blah, blah, woe is me, right? I read David Goggins' Can't Hurt Me, and realized, I was like, man, you stop being a little bitch and get to work. Like, what are you going to do? All right. And so I just deleted social media off of my phone completely, downloaded Audible, just started listening to more and more audiobooks, got really introspective. And I was already getting up at like 5:30 or so to work, to train and, just lift weights or do whatever on my own. I decided to challenge myself and went into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu gym and just said, I've always kind of wanted to do. I've never did martial arts or wrestling in my life.
So you did a reset, basically.
I did a complete reset. I said, I'm going to go harder. I'm going to figure out how I can work more and challenge myself even further. Because when I read that book and I realized all the things he did, I'm like, I'm not working that hard. Like, I train an hour. I'll go to the gym like everybody. I'm like, no, there's levels to this game, and you need to step it up. And that had a sequential impact on everything that came after that. So now I'm going to jiu-jitsu in the morning, and I'm getting humbled. And I'm a leader of a company. Everyone looks to me for answers, whatever.
Yeah, it's the grappling. I have a friend who's a professional. He does the Brazilian. I mean, it's incredible.
When you start out too, and you
but you're
butt
like
kicked all day, every day. It's humbling.
Yeah.
So I'm 6 o'clock in the morning. I'm starting off getting humbled every day. I kind of put you in a good place. And I'm doing something really hard. And I would train before I went in there. I would run and then do that, and then sometimes do things after. But your endorphins kick in. You're trained. My confidence levels, now that I'm in the shape I'm in and I'm trained, like, my confidence levels are through the roof, right? Totally. My children look at me differently. I coach the soccer team, my son, or the baseball teams, and I'm running around on the fields with those kids. They're having a hard time keeping up with me. And I look at some of these other dads, and they're having a hard time just walking out to the field. And I don't know what type of example that sets for your children. And so, I mean, I want to be active for
well, we know what it sets for the children.
Well,
I mean,
yeah.
you can see, unfortunately, the parents, the children are overweight. They're watching TV 24/7. The parents look like they're walking heart attacks. It's shameful, and it's unfortunate that people can't get out of their own way when it comes to some of this stuff. And it's that whole idea about this, what I talk about, this hybrid entrepreneur, where you try to provide that balance where you're traveling down these multiple lanes, these parallel lanes, but for whatever reason, one particular area, whether it's your career or your health always seems to be the last in line.
It should be first.
And it should be first. And people play catch up later on with the whole thing. It's a balancing act that people have to come to terms with and recognize sooner, or what ends up happening, right? They get that health alert or that devastating call or issue that comes up. Oh, I got high blood pressure, or I got diabetes. Where did this come from?
Well, one of the things that helps me is people have described it in different ways, having circles, and kind of prioritizing them, which size. And I just kind of make a priority list every year. Like, what are my top things, right? And my health and my fitness is always the first. And, when I was running the business, it was the business and then my family. Not that they were far off, but meaning if I have to make a decision as to what I'm going to do with my time in this moment, right? And it's going to impact these different things. And some of them might be social, friends, things like that I'm going to give up. That's what ultimately I gave up to get where I got to. I focused on my health, focused on my family, and I focused on my business. If those were satisfied, okay, maybe I'll go golfing or I'll hang with the boys. But if not, those are the priorities. And even now, on the weekends, I get up with the kids, they know exactly where to find me. I'm going to be working out. That's their time to watch a little TV show or whatever. Then daddy will be with them to hang out and make breakfast and do all that kind of stuff. But first and foremost, my health. Because without it, I can't serve anyone else.
Yeah.
And it's been a monumental shift in my life. I'm never giving it up. I'm the happiest I've ever been. It's my meditation. It's my time for introspective thought. I mean, when you're on a jiu-jitsu mat or you're just training, you're not thinking about anything else. You're in that moment. And it's kind of like people say, oh, you got to get in the woods and get rid of your phone or whatever. Yeah, you can do that if you can find it. But I'll tell you what you can do. Go do something really hard that takes 100% of your energy. And in that moment, all your problems will go away. You're not thinking of anything else.
It's so important. I tell people that I've been like bodybuilding on and off. I don't even call it bodybuilding anymore. I'm just training and exercising for such a long time. And I always say the gym doesn't lie. And I'm in the gym and I check out. And I'm so fortunate. My wife is into the same lifestyle as me. We built a gym here in the office. So it's like, we're members at multiple places. And when we travel, we always make sure it's all part of our life. It's more important than goofing off with, a bunch of buddies or doing something like that. It's crucial, I think, to my mental sanity, my clarity, which sounds very parallel to you. And I think it also shows discipline. The general public see you. I think that when you walk into a room, they see an individual who's disciplined automatically by the way you carry yourself, how you're dressed. So before you even open up your mouth, you already have an edge of somebody who's not, who doesn't take care of themselves. So there's that inner confidence in you to handle things. It shows maturity, you modeling behavior. It's a ripple effect. I think that's so positive for one's existence. And anybody who's listening, who's watching, just take that first step. If you think that, I'm past that point. No, you're never past that point. That first step, and don't be so hard on yourself. You start baby steps, whatever it is. If it's walking, whatever it is, you immerse yourself in the jiu-jitsu.
Long before I did that, when I was really out of shape, I told you I was 190 pounds or whatever, the first thing I started doing was just walking.
Yeah.
I got up early for 2 weeks in a row. I got up, walked to the gym, and did half a mile on the treadmill and left. I was there for 10 minutes. I'm in and I'm out. And all I did was just get used to the habit of waking up and doing something. And it took a good couple of weeks for me to hardwire. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to stay a little longer and pick a weight. mean, you only have to get a little bit better. And this is with everything in life.
Yeah.
Everything's an opportunity to improve. And you really don't, I think people make this huge mistake, oh, I'm going to go to the gym, I'm going to create a trainer. And then they get sore and then they don't do it. And then it's like overwhelming because they go from eating everything they want to eating nothing. And that's no way to do it.
It's all extremes.
It's too extreme, right? And the way that I found success was just incremental adjustments, right? There's a great book, The Compound Effect, that I read. I think it's Darren Hardy. And it's just about the idea of these small decisions we make, whether positive or negative, every day, and the cumulative effect they have, right? So a great example of that is like, you could not walk every day. You could make that decision. Or you could walk 10 minutes a day, every day. How many minutes is that per year? How many miles does that end up being, right? Same with food. Oh, I just had a Hershey Kiss today. Had one every day throughout the year. How much chocolate did you end up putting in your body, right?
Yeah.
Switch that to something else that's more positive and watch the effect. So, and this goes back to being able to hold a vision or a goal for a long period of time, because, I mean, until you're dead, it's not over, right? So I think the mistake people make is they want instant gratification. And I think, and this goes for health, goes for business, all these sort of things. You have to be able to set that goal and then do the small steps every day that'll get you there. Create those really strong habits that'll get there. Because if it becomes a short-term thing, it's going to fail. And I've failed so many times. I was like, I'd get in shape and then I'd gain 20 pounds back. You know, I'd go on a vacation and it would all fall apart because I didn't create good habits.
Yeah, you have to create those good habits. Exactly.
Yeah.
You have to, and like you said, starting out initially, doing it a little bit, you do it repetitively over a period of time, it becomes a habit. Even unbeknownst to you, it becomes a habit.
Right.
And that's what you end up doing. And then before you know it, but yeah, it's the Google world for a lot of people, and they have to kind of get away from that. Not to mention the self gratification associated with going from point A to point B over time in the journey. It's like living, that's the other part of life we talk about, right? Enjoy the journey. The journey is where you're learning. It's not just getting to the end goal with whatever end goal that may be. You're picking up so much as you're going through this journey. You're learning about yourself, the challenges as you move forward in your development. That could be in fitness, that can be in business, that can be in relationships, whatever it is. And
that's where you find fulfillment.
Yeah.
In the doing.
Yeah.
You know, with the business, I mean, it was like such an amazing moment when we sold the company, right? It was like this goal, this thing, we did it. But looking back, I grew so much as a person, as a leader over that time by putting myself through that challenge. And almost immediately after, I looked around, I actually started to slide back into depression after I sold the company a little bit. I didn't have a drag in the sleigh. I didn't have a goal. I woke up every day for 7 years with a purpose, with a driving force of, I'm going to achieve this thing. When that went away, it's like, all right, well, now what's my purpose?
All right, well, that's a good segue. So tell me, what's next for Brian?
Well, in the short term, I'm focusing on my health and fitness enough to, so like most things, I'm doing this MMA thing and the jiu-jitsu stuff, like where can I take it, right? How far can I do it? I did a tournament recently. I've done a couple tournaments, did pretty well. Been through a bunch of injuries, but I've set my mind to doing an amateur MMA fight. I'm going to get in a cage. I'm going to strap on the gloves. I'm going to lock that door behind me and I'm going to get in there with another man and see what happens.
Wow.
42 years old. I don't know if it's a smart decision. My wife would disagree, but I've set this goal and I'm doing the work to do it. I don't know exactly when, but this goes back to the same thing. I've been training hard for like 2 years to prepare for this. And I don't even know when it's actually going to happen, but I know I need to build the foundational elements, my physical, my capabilities, my technical skills before I could even be able to do it. And my coaches have committed to letting me do it once I hit certain milestones. So we're hoping later this year I can do that. So I'm pouring a ton of energy into that. I've been training 2-3 hours a day plus recovery, things like that. So that's my main focus right now. Plus I've been coaching t-ball, coaching soccer.
So reconnecting for the most part with the kid, with the family, a little bit more, just taking a little bit of a break in that regard.
Yeah. So I get up early, do all my training, get all my stuff out of the way. My kids get home from school at 3. Cool. Daddy's available.
But it sounds, there's no doubt, I think you're going to be successful in your endeavors with the MMA, but I wouldn't doubt that you've also got some little sparks in the background with new business ventures.
100%. Yeah. So that's more just like my personal short term. I just wanted to decompress from business for a while, right? I want to make sure I get my priorities straight. So like this year they shifted, right? When we talked about having this priority list. Well, business is down the bottom of the list right now. So it's family and health and business will come, and actually my friends, business is outside of that. So I'm focused on friends, family, and my health and, the business is there. So I'm making some investments. I'm really learning how to be an investor instead of an operator. So I'm looking for mentors. I'm partnering, hanging out with people. I've made some investments with people that I think mainly in their relationship. I don't think the investments are going to do bad, but
that's like that's a whole other area, right? Angel investment or venture capital or doing something else
this company right here, The Few, it's called Few Will Hunt. So it's a community of people who are dedicated to restoring the dignity of hard work. And it's a whole community of people who are just getting after it, trying to be the people that we all say we need in the world, right? And so I'm actually becoming an investor in this company because I believe in what they do, right? And so I'm kind of finding people like that, but really that's a small percentage of the portfolio. I don't think I would consider all that speculative, right? Angel and VC and all that. You really shouldn't be committing a huge portion. So most of my money is very safe.
Yeah.
I'm doing some of that. And a lot of those reasons are to build relationships and network and grow within the areas I want to. And then really my main goal is to acquire new cash flowing businesses that are already up and running so that I'm not starting it from scratch, installing executives to run them day to day. And then I just kind of operate as a chairman or so to help them grow. But I ultimately want to create a portfolio of businesses that we can continue to grow.
Well, that's great. We wish you nothing but success. And there's no doubt that I think you're going to be successful and continue to be successful. Well, we went a long time. I want to thank you for taking the time. You shared so many nuggets with us. And I think I'm going to, try and arrange to get you back on because we could talk about a lot more different things. I think we've touched on a bunch of bullets, but we didn't really get in depth with regard to your business model and how how you managed through all of that, which may be something that we'll see in the comments section if people want to learn more things.
Some real nuggets on creating culture and empowering employees and how that can drive a business to excel and scale at a really fast level.
I think that the scalability aspect of one's vision is crucial in the space that we talk about with entrepreneurs, and instead of being in that static place of like, for example, as a lawyer, I just have me. And it's not much to scale me. Can't really scale me. But in different business models, it's very easy to scale, but you've got to have that vision in place to be able to do that. Well, thank you again for coming on and talking with us. And remember, everybody, keep it pro to pro. That's all for today's episode of Pro to Pro. I hope you enjoyed hearing from our guest and gained some valuable insights into the world of entrepreneurship. Like and subscribe to stay up to date with the latest episodes, and don't forget to follow us on social media. Thanks for watching and listening, and remember to keep it pro to pro.